Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This is going to be a guide to get you to round 100 in Citadelle Day More super easily. And to do that, I'm going to cover the early game, and then we're going to transition into a mid-game strat, which is really easy. And then I'll show you an even easier, really late game strat, and that's going to take you all the way to 100 and beyond. So if you're ready to get started, drop a like on the video and we'll begin. The first thing to do before you begin your game is to select the Sigma as your loadout weapon, and that's because the Sigma is extremely difficult to get out of the mystery box in this game. It's just really rare, so it's worthwhile spawning in with it as your loadout weapon, and then you can just upgrade its rarity as you progress through your match. You're also going to want to use Frenzied Guard as your field upgrade, and you can use whatever equipment you want, but I would also recommend spawning in with the Power Drill, because that's just going to be a really quick melee weapon for you to use in those early rounds, should you so desire. Also, for this to work most effectively, you're going to want to make sure that you've researched the Vulture Egg augment called Picky Eater, and that's going to mean that later in the game, you can get a bunch of Kazmir grenades to spawn in, and that's going to speed things up for you. I also think that using the extension Frenzied Guard augment is a good idea, and on Jug, have hardened plates on so you take less damage through your armor. That's going to really make a very big difference when you get into those later rounds, because zombies are going to hit for more damage at that point. And I also like to use Probiotic, but you're also welcome to use Reactive Armor as an alternative option. Finally, for pre-game setup, you're going to want to get the Akimbo GS45s, so that's unlocked at level 31 for that gun, and then you need to set that as your zombie build for the weapon by pressing your left trigger. So create your loadout with Akimbo, set it as the zombie build, but then make sure that you've got the Sigma equipped as your loadout weapon, okay? So you just need the build selected for the GS45, but the loadout itself will be the Sigma. And that way, when you buy it off the wall later in the game, you'll have them Akimbo off the wall. Once you spawn into your game, I would recommend turning on the Rampage Inducer. It's in the corner, and it will speed up all the zombies. You won't get more points from this or anything else. There's no other reward. It just makes it go faster. So it's worth doing if you're trying to get to round 100 nice and quickly. But because we're spawning in with a Sigma and the Power Drill melee weapon, it is quite quickly going to get pretty scary using the Rampage Inducer. So you don't need to have it on forever by any means. You can just turn it off as soon as things get too sketchy. But to make the most of it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hoard up and basically constantly walk backwards and just try and sort of graze the zombies with my melee. So I'll get a couple of melee kills, I'll get some more space from the zombies, etc. And I'll keep the spawn doors shut while I'm doing this, and that still does mean that you can buy the GS45 off the wall if you'd like to, but I quite like doing that as late in my game as possible, because if you don't do it straight away, there's a chance that it will go from green to blue rarity if you can wait long enough, and that's just going to save you a little bit of extra salvage. So I wouldn't buy the GS round 1 by any means, but you will need to buy it before you leave the spawn, which we'll talk about in a second here, because you're going to need it to take down the Ghast in a moment. So you're going to keep taking out zombies in the spawn, and then around rounds 8 to 9, you're going to leave and start progressing through the castle. And I would really recommend you go on the right-hand side here, and that's going to open up to the night room, and then you can hook around into the quick revive room and then open up to Pap. And the reason I'm recommending doing it that way round is because you do not want to open the door between the Pack-a-Punch room and the water room. That needs to stay shut for this strategy to work, so just be very mindful of that. Don't accidentally open that door by any means. Now, while we're opening all these doors, we can also pick up the bottles for the PhD Flopper free perk Easter egg, and that's the only way we can guarantee ourselves PhD Flopper before the Wonder Fizz spawns in on round 25 onwards. So the first bottle can be found just here. That's where that is. The second bottle can be found just here, just there. And the third bottle is in the water room. So you're going to need to go around the map and not go through the Pack-a-Punch to water room door, right? We're keeping that shut. So go around the map, enter the water room via the other side, grab the bottle, and then, as you can see, you need to avoid that door at all costs. Now, we'll finish that PhD Easter egg in just a moment, but first I want to just show you the Pack-a-Punch process. If you've bought the GS45s, it's going to make it very easy for you to take the Ghast down, and as soon as the pack is activated, I would recommend Pack-a-Punching the GS45s. With that done, it's time to finish off that free PhD Easter egg, so we're going to go back to the spawn area and go to the bar, hold square here on the silver tray to start it, and just serve the drinks corresponding to the zombie colors to the zombies, and after a couple of minutes you'll get a whole load of points, and you'll then get your free PhD Flopper. After this, rounds 10 to 30 are basically just setup time, and the perks I would recommend getting first in that time are Vulture Aid, Speed Cola, Jug, Quick Revive, which will then insert itself into one of your first 3 perk slots. So you can basically buy that at any point in those first 4. And then also you'll have PhD as well. And during that time, you can also build the swords should you so desire, but you are not going to need to use the swords for this round 100 attempt. So if you don't want to sort of faff about with doing that, you could just focus on taking zombies down as fast as possible and getting through those rounds. Now, the strat I used in order to do this in my early rounds, 10 to 30, was sitting down here in the Pack-a-Punch area with the Mustang and Sallies and just activating the trap, which would give you infinite ammo, and then spamming the Sallies. And it's very straightforward. The zombies will slow down when they get near the trap, and then while the trap is on cooldown, you can then just move over to the Quick Revive room and activate that trap and use that for a while, and then just go back and forth, rinsing and repeating. Now, while you're doing all this, you're going to earn a lot of points, and I would recommend spending those points first, primarily on upgrading your Mustang and Sallies, and you also want to spend salvage on upgrading their rarity as well. As you start to approach, like, round 40, let's say, you're going to end up with just a ton of points anyway, so I would also start Pack-a-Punching your Sigma, and you can start working on the rarity for that as well. Also, during that time, if any multiphasic injector drops during a trap activation or from killing amalgams or whatever, then I'd really recommend grabbing it because it's a good get out of jail free card to have in a sticky situation. And also, if you do choose to do some of the sword building processes, especially the lightning one, and you get the lightning incantation, that can be really useful to have because it can insta-kill amalgams, so you just don't need to worry about them at all through the rest of your game if you've got that unlocked. However, later on, like I said, we're going to be really focusing on Kazmir's, and so we're not going to need the lightning incantation for a lot of this, so I wouldn't really stress about getting that, but it's just a nice tip if you're struggling with the rounds 10 to 30 part of the process here. But regardless, assuming you can get through those first sort of early rounds, you're going to get your guns tier 3 Pack-a-Punched and gold, and that's when you can start moving on to the main strategy. So the strat works as follows. You're going to pull out your Sigma rather than your Sallies here. The Sigma is going to be the focus, and you're going to turn on one of these red eyeball traps. You're then going to look at the ground and just hold the trigger down. And because the trap is going to give you infinite ammo, it means that it's going to fire like an LMG, but with the damage of an RPG. And you can just keep firing at the floor until the trap ends, and because you've got PhD as one of your first perks, you're also going to take no splash damage. Now, this is so fast, this strategy is so quick that it's going to pretty much take out an entire round of zombies just from one trap activation, which is crazy, but there will be certain rounds where a couple zombies are stragglers, you just got a couple of leftover zombies or whatever, and in those rounds, I'd recommend switching to your Mustang and Sallies and using those to finish the round, and when you've finished the round, you're gonna have the trap that you just used on cooldown for a little while, so that's your opportunity to move to the other trap in the adjacent room, and then start using that trap, do the exact same thing, and by the time the following round starts, the original trap that you first used will be off cooldown, and so you can just bounce between the two. Now, as you go into the higher rounds, it's going to get increasingly chaotic, bit by bit. I mean, the zombies are going to start super sprinting, and they're also going to start doing more damage, so between sort of rounds 50 and 60, let's say, you're going to really feel the intensity ramp up a little bit. And so, I'd really recommend you pay attention to your health while you're firing your Sigma, and as soon as your armor is broken and you're low on health, pop your Frenzied Guard, and that will mean that you're basically invincible. Like, you can just chill, and that will get you through to the end of the round, usually. Now, I already mentioned multiphasic injectors, but you're going to get so many more of them now, just because you're taking out so many boss zombies, so keep an eye out for them and pick another one up if you do use one. And they're going to be better to have than the Chopper Gunner, for example, because if you do pop your mutant injector, it's going to be usable in this room. Like, you're not going to need to sort of fire down on the zombies from above, right? So that's my preference for score streak. And for bug rounds, as you go through this, I sat in the pap room, and I'd usually just throw a Kazmir, which you can craft at the crafting bench, and then start shooting after that. But you can honestly just do them normally and just spam. Like, it's fine. It's really not a big deal. And Kazmirs overall are just amazing for this strat. They're really good, especially if you do have that augment that I recommended, because when you start getting into those later rounds, like we're starting to approach, let's say, the mid-60s at this point, you're going to have a lot of zombies spawn all at once at the very beginning of a round. And so if you use a Kazmir for that and you throw it near a barrier, all the zombies are going to get sucked in, and that's going to mean that you're going to get more usage out of the trap, right? Because the trap increasingly is not going to finish the wave for you in one go here. But with Kazmirs, you can get a lot more round progress much more quickly. And because you're using the augment, you're going to basically have infinite Kazmirs, so you won't have to keep crafting them. Now, once you start hitting, let's say, the late 60s, the strat is going to get a bit rough rough, even if you are using Kazmir's, just because the trap is not going to be enough to take out all the zombies in the round. And so you're going to need to start switching between traps mid-round. And for some people, they switch to Ether Shroud to do this, so they can just get between the traps really easily. But I personally like sticking with Frenzied Guard, as you're still able to maneuver through the zombies while you have it active, and you get all your armor back. So why not? And so now you're just going to repeat the strat as we've been doing, but you're going to juggle the traps as you go. So that'll work for finishing off your 60s, but once you're at retirement age, it's time to move on to a new strat, right? So I mentioned we'd kind of be hopping between them in this video, and this next one is potentially even easier, and it works also forever as well. You could go to around 200 with this if you wanted. Once you've got yourself, let's say 40 to 50,000 salvage, I think 40k is probably fine. It's time to come down to the basement under the pub in the room by the Raven wheel, which you use for the Easter egg. And at the crafting bench, you're going to buy yourself, you guessed it, a multiphasic injector. And once you use it, you can just spam melee to take out all the zombies in a round. And then between rounds, you can just buy another one, and you'll get a bunch of salvage back from killing all the zombies as well, which is nice. But that salvage alone is not going to be enough for you to just have infinite salvage forever. You need to find some other ways to get more salvage if you want to progress past round 100, let's say. So my suggestion for this is that at the start of a round, you throw a Kazmir at the barrier like I'm doing in the gameplay here, and then start shooting your sallies. This means a few things happen. Number one, I have the suppressor attachment on my sallies, and so I'm going to get more salvage for kills with those weapons compared to getting kills with, let's say, the multiphasic injector. So that's one benefit. There's just going to be more salvage dropped on the floor. But there's another benefit as well, which is that if any boss zombies like ghasts end up getting killed by my sallies, I also have more of a chance to get a free mutant injector from them, because if you're in a mutant injector, you're less likely to get score streaks from your kills, but if you're using a regular weapon, you're more likely to get score streaks. So this is quite a nice way to get free mutant injectors, and that way the burn on the salvage that you have is massively reduced, and your 40 to 50k salvage that I recommended will still be maybe 20k salvage or something by the time you get to round 100. So you can just keep on going. And if at any time you get worried about your salvage, you can just rotate back to that previous strat and juggle the traps just for a round or two, build a bit more salvage back up, and then hop back here. That's totally fine. Now, the previous strat for bug rounds, right, pre-patch, was to save and quit and hope that you just didn't get bugs, right? But nowadays, they've patched it so the bug rounds are faster, and we actually do really want to make use of the bug rounds. The way that we're going to do them is we're going to throw our Kazmir into the middle of the room, and then use the sallies again to take all the bugs out as they're getting sucked in, and that's going to mean that you get a ton of salvage from all the bugs, and you'll get Kazmir's back again because of our Vulture Aid Augment. And that's how you can get to round 100. Drop a like on the video if you found this useful, leave a comment with any extra suggestions that you might have about making this even more effective, and once you hit round 100, why not go for a round 100 boss fight completion? I'll link a video on screen right now explaining exactly how you do the main quest Easter egg, so you can click through to that and give it a try. I'll see you guys there. Bye for now.